The stars had grown cold to us. Once beacons of exploration and promise, they now looked down with the distant indifference of gods watching a dying prayer. The earth had given all it could. Oceans had boiled away in places, ice had drowned cities. In others, and the last known rain to fall on human skin had come decades ago, acidic and bitter. Nations no longer warred. There were no more borders, no more politics, only survival and the slow, brutal acceptance that we had failed as caretakers. At our cradle, one by one, species vanished. Forests burned or fossilized, rivers either dried or flooded forever. The atmosphere grew thin, the soil turned to dust. And in that dust, the last generation of Earth's children, cradled in ruin, whispered to one another stories of when birds still sang dot in the ruins of Nairobi. Under the cracked bones of a broken biodome, she activated the beacon. Dr. Lian Corso had once been a climate physicist, a dreamer of ozone recovery and solar stabilizers. Now she was nothing more than a custodian of desperation. She stood barefoot, sunburned and tired as the machine whirred to life, drawing power from an underground thermocell that had survived both tectonic fracturing and 20 years of neglect. The beacon's antenna rose like a silver spine into the reddening sky. Its message was brief, raw, and painfully human. It didn't boast of peace or wisdom or greatness. It simply said, "We are dying. We have no one left. We ask for help from anyone." Even the monsters, that was the gamble. They had called it the Last Call Project, a deep space transmission rig designed not to contact friends, but predators. Civilizations that ancient spacefaring empires had warned us never to disturb. The archives referred to them only as the Alari Exiles, an unnamed race sequestered in a forbidden squadron of the Perseid Veil. Their tech was reportedly vast and cruel. Their ethics, if they had any, unknown. The beacons had never been fired during the golden age of humanity's expansion. Now, with nothing left to lose, Lian made the call. She had expected silence or static or destruction. What came was a voice dot. It was not synthetic. It was not warped by time lag or filtered through distorted lingua code. It came in clear, low, and strangely soft, as if it knew how fragile the ears listening would be. "We heard your pain. We did not forget the taste of loss, humanity. Are you prepared to know what help truly costs?" Lian fell to her knees, not in terror, but something far more dangerous, hope. Because in that single moment, in that simple question, she heard something no alien transmission had ever given. Empathy, cold, calculated, but real. And just like that, everything changed. The work council that no longer met reformed within the week. The scattered AI satellites, once dormant, began pulsing awake. Orbit relays caught strange data across gamma bands. Something was coming. Something old. Something angry. And it wasn't coming to conquer Dot, it was coming because we had cried, but across the remnants of Earth. Not all believed this was salvation. Some said that Alari had destroyed civilizations for less. Others warned that an offer of help from a predator only meant they were fattening the prey. Yet still, the signal was left open. Lian became the contact point, humanity's last ambassador, the one entrusted with the ongoing dialogue, and the alien voice returned, again and again, never showing its face, never revealing its form. But with each call, it listened more than it spoke. It asked of art, of grief, of how children used to laugh. It asked of war and how we learned to bury the dead. It asked if love ever outlasted fear. And Lian answered, not as a scientist, not as a soldier, but as a human being. From the ashes of extinction bloomed something no one had dared to name. A relationship. One born not of politics or science, but mead. And one day, the voice said, "We are coming." It did not say how many, it did not say what shape. It did not promise salvation or conquest. But it said they were coming, and for the first time in a generation, a child was born the day after. She was named Elia, meaning answered by God. No one knew if it was a beginning or the end of ends. But they looked up again, not with fear, with waiting. Asterisk, asterisk, the ship arrived without fire, without thunder. No great rupture in the sky, no shimmering portal or storm of light. Just a quiet fold in space above Earth's dead orbit, as if the universe exhaled and something stepped through. It hung there, black against black, rarely visible, an absence rather than a presence. It did not descend, it simply watched. For days, weeks, silent. Dr. Lian Corso stood in the cracked remains of the Johannesburg Observatory, staring at it through a salvaged scope. She had aged since the beacon's activation. Hope, it turns out, is a weight just as heavy as despair. But she still kept the earpiece in. She still waited. And then the voice returned, this time not through a transmission, but inside her head, as soft as falling ash. "You are not ready," it said. Lian flinched. "We have no more time to be ready." Silence again. Then, for the first time, the voice carried something like hesitation. "We fear your kindness." That line broke something in her. She sat down amidst the dust and broken glass, her shoulders trembling. "Then we are already more powerful than you thought?" She didn't know if the voice could feel emotion, but it didn't respond for nearly 2 days. When it did, the tone was different, quieter, less formal. "One of us will descend, alone." The world stirred. What remained of the United Peace delegates demanded a militarized response. The old remnants of Earth's orbital defense systems, mostly rusted sky tombs, hummed awake with half-functioning AIs, but Lian stood before them all and said no. "We sent the call," she reminded them, and someone answered. "We will meet them not with missiles, but with hands open." No one wanted her to go, but she was the only one who had spoken with the being. She was the only voice it had trusted. So she climbed into a repurposed lander, loaded with nothing but water, food, and books, real paper books, and waited on the plains of old Kenya, where the visitor said it would land. It came at night, no fire. No sound, the air shimmered. The stars above warped as though a lens had bent the sky, and then it stood there, not walking, not stepping, just being as if it had always been there, hiding in the blind spot of perception until now. It was tall, humanoid, but wrong. Its skin was dark, metallic, and yet not metal, more like the inside of a storm cloud, alive and writhing. Its eyes were empty, like twin mirrors swallowing light, but it stood without aggression, arms by its side, as if waiting to be judged. Lian approached. She expected fear. Instead, what she felt was sorrow. A deep, bone-chilling sorrow that radiated from the being like a scent. She stopped a few feet away. The creature did not move. Slowly, she extended her hand. "My name is Lian," she said. "I don't want to hurt you." It didn't speak, not aloud. But the voice bloomed again in her mind. "You are not armed." She smiled bitterly. "We have nothing left to arm ourselves with." A pause. "You brought books," it said. She blinked. "Yes, stories, history, poetry. I thought you might want to understand who we are." The creature knelt not in worship, but in sorrow. It reached one long hand toward the books, touched the worn spine of a collection of Neruda's poems, and recoiled slightly as if burned. "Your pain is in these pages," it murmured. "You carried it into space?" Lian knelt beside it, ignoring her shaking legs. "We carry it because it's all we have left. We thought maybe if you saw us, really saw us, you might help." The being looked at her then, fully. No veil, no hiding. Just ancient eyes and grief stretching back beyond comprehension. "We were once like you," it said. "But our hearts died long ago. We replaced them with code. Then we replaced the code with silence. We were supposed to forget how to feel. Then, why did you come?" She whispered. The answer came like the last breath of a dying sun. "Because you made us remember." And just like that, the two sat under the fractured moon. A human and a monster, sharing the silence that comes after unimaginable loss. Lian handed it the book. It took it carefully, cradling the poetry as if it were something sacred. In that moment, there was no peace treaty, no salvation. Only two broken creatures trying to remember what it meant to care. The days that followed were quiet, marked not by revelation or fear, but by moments that passed slowly, softly, like pages turning in an old journal. The visitor Lian never called it an alien anymore, took no name, nor did it offer one. She began calling it Ash, after the color of its skin and the way it moved like wind over ruin. Ash never corrected her. That in itself felt like trust. They stayed together in the shell of the old conservation dome, where giraffes once wandered under glass. Now it was a grave of steel ribs and sun-bleached bones, and yet, somehow, it felt alive again with Ash. There, each day, Lian would read aloud, sometimes stories, sometimes poems, sometimes accounts of horror or sacrifice that wrung her heart dry. Ash listened with a stillness that made Lian question if it was even breathing, if it breathed it. It never ate. It never slept. But each time she finished a story, it would ask questions, simple, piercing ones. Why did the mother die for the child? Why did the man forgive the killer? Why do you sing when you suffer? Lian would try to answer. Sometimes with reason, sometimes with tears, because it was not knowledge Ash thought it was meaning. One day, while reading a letter penned during Earth's last global blackout, Lian paused, her voice trembling. He wrote to his wife even though she was already dead. He knew it, but he still sent it. Why? She looked at Ash, hollow-eyed from sleepless nights. You asked me that once. I never really answered. Ash turned its reflective eyes to her, like polished obsidian windows to something deeper. Because it mattered to him, even if no one else would see. She nodded slowly. Yes, we need things to matter, even when the world says they don't. That's what it means to be human. Ash was silent for a long time. Then it rose and walked to where a burnt tree split the dome's edge. With a motion surprisingly gentle for its size, it traced one long finger down the trunk. The bark flicked away, revealing a single line engraved. By fire, perhaps, or something older. We too once etched memories into trees, it said. Before we learned how to kill our own memories. That night, Lian dared to ask what had been growing behind her tongue for days. What happened? To your people? Ash didn't move at first. But the air thickened. The dome creaked, as if the world itself held its breath. When it spoke, the voice was different, not louder, but deeper. Like it came from a wound that had never healed. We feared pain, so we removed it. Neural circuits, emotion inhibitors. Cultural sterilization. Over eons, we cleansed ourselves. Of empathy, we called it evolution. And it destroyed you? Ash shook its head slowly. It saved us from war, from chaos, from tears. But it left us hollow. We survived. But we were no longer alive. So we scattered, became watchers. Observers of what we can no longer be. And we watched thousands of species rise and burn. Lian swallowed. Then why not stop them? Warn them? We are not gods, Ash said. And we forgot how to care. She looked down at the worn pages of the book in her lap, trembling. But now? Ash reached out, not to her, but to the flame she had built earlier to boil water, a tiny flickering thing barely alive in the dust. It held a hand above it, letting the heat dance across its skin. Now I remember what warmth means, because of you. Lian didn't know what to say to that, so she did something braver. She stepped forward and embraced a dot it didn't know what to do. She felt it tense, confused, afraid even. Then slowly, awkwardly, it returned the gesture. And there, amidst ash and ruin, between a species that forgot how to love and one that refused to stop, they shared a silence that said everything. Night, under a sky clogged with dying stars, Ash asked the first human question it ever had. Will you read me another one? Asterisk, asterisk, the days turned gold with stillness, the kind of peace that almost made Lian forget the world was ending. Ash remained near the dome, never straying far, always listening, always learning. It had taken a liking to a particular book, A Weathered anthology of war letters from soldiers across human history. Ash studied them with a solemnity that unsettled Lian at first, but she sensed it wasn't fascination with violence. It was something deeper, a searching. An ache dot, then came the storm dot, not from the sky, but from the stars. She first noticed the pulse on the old observatory screen, a flicker too symmetrical to be natural. Ash confirmed it with a simple glance. They followed. It whispered dot Lian single quotes. Blood turned to ice. Who? Ash stepped back from the screen. None of my kind, but because of me. She stared at him, voice tight. What does that mean? I was not supposed to come here. My kind are bound by silence, observation, non-interference. When your call came, it echoed through places it should not have. Some heard it who never forgot the scent of flesh. A chill rolled through her bones. You mean other species? Ash gave the faintest nod, like a shadow shifting on the wall. The signal was not just a cry. It was a beacon of vulnerability. And they are not like me. They will not kneel to poetry. They will not ask what forgiveness means. They will come to harvest what remains. Lian stood slowly, her body fragile beneath the weight of that truth. How long? 3 days? Perhaps less. Her breath caught. The Earth had no defenses left. The remnants of orbital cannons were dead metal, the few fighter crafts grounded forever without fuel or pilots. Humanity's final hope had summoned. More than an answer, it had summoned the vultures, but Ash was still. Too still. You knew this might happen, she said, voice cracking. I suspected. Ash said, not in shame, but in that quiet tone he used when reading the saddest pages of her books. But I had to come. I had to remember. She turned away, choking on the taste of betrayal. You doomed us. I did not save you, he agreed, but neither did I condemn you. I came to witness the last breath of what I once was. And now I find I can no longer bear to watch. She spun to face him, then help us. You must have weapons, defenses, call your kind. Ash looked down at his hands as if they were no longer his own. My kind will not answer. They do not save. And what I carry is not a weapon, but a memory. A forbidden's memory. What memory? Ash closed his eyes, if they could be called that. Emotion, empathy, regret. Long ago, we extracted these from ourselves and locked them away. I was one of the keepers of that vault. I read the archives. I listened to the sorrow of other species as they burned. Over centuries, I grew contaminated. He opened his hands, and for the first time, Lian saw something glow, a faint shimmer of silver light, flickering like a dying firefly. It is all I have. The last echo of what we used to be. I can't stop them. Not with force. She stared at it, heart pounding. Then what can it do? Ash looked at her with an expression that wasn't quite human, but unmistakably filled with something more. Ancient and tragic, it can remind them, he said. But I will not survive it. Lian shook her head slowly. You're saying you'd sacrifice yourself? Ash gave the smallest nod. If even one among them truly remembers, what? It means to feel it may be enough. Not to save the earth, but to save them. Before they become what we did. The enormity of it crushed her, not in fear, but in reverence. He was not human. But in that moment, he was the most human soul she had ever known. She reached out and touched his hand. It felt like touching the storm itself. Then I'll stand with you, she said. Ash tilted his head. Even knowing you may die? Especially then, she whispered. Outside, the sky began to change. Not with fire, not yet, but with color streaks of green and violet warping through the clouds. A warning written in celestial script. They were coming, a fleet that had never known mercy. And standing before them would be a monster. And a woman with nothing left but her heart. And somehow, that felt like enough. Asterisk. The sky cracked open the next morning, not with thunder, but with silence so total it stole breath. Above the earth, ships began to bloom like black petals in reverse, 1,000 dark crescents stretching across the upper atmosphere. They did not announce themselves. They did not negotiate. They simply hovered, a harvest fleet of ancient design, cold and absolute. The Watchers had arrived, drawn by the last call, a signal of suffering, of weakness, of prey. Lian stood atop the old Biodome's roof, the wind pulling at her coat like invisible fingers trying to drag her backward, away from what was coming. She could feel it now in her bones, a vibration under the skin, as though even the air knew it would be changed forever by what came next. Her come was dead. Global networks were failing, and the cities that still breathed, people stared into the sky and saw their end reflected in obsidian. Ash remained below, motionless in the sanctum they had built from ruins and memories. The silver glow within him had grown stronger, a pulsing light barely contained beneath that shifting skin of ash and storm. Lian entered slowly, unsure if she was interrupting something sacred. He didn't look at her as he spoke. They are preparing to descend. You have perhaps 4 hours, she clenched her fists. Then we make it count. Ash finally turned to her, and this time she saw a change. The sadness was still there, but now sharpened by something else. Resolve. I can make them feel, he said, voice low, but the echo must be amplified. Lian frowned. How? You, he said. Human emotion is unpredictable, wild, but potent. My signal will collapse without a catalyst. But if linked to a living human mind, one strong enough to channel grief and love and fury into the broadcast, it might pierce their shell. She felt the breath go out of her. You want me to fuse with you? Ash said nothing, the silence. Was her answer? It would not be a gentle connection. It would rip through her consciousness like fire through paper. She might survive a minute, maybe less. But in that minute, she could show them what it meant to feel, to weep, to hope, to love. She sank onto a cracked bench, burying her face in her hands. You realize what you're asking? I do, Ash said, stepping closer. But I ask not as an alien, nor as a savior. I ask as a friend. And that word struck her harder than any explosion. Friend. It was a term used so carelessly by humans, and yet from his voice, it rang like truth. She had taught him to feel, and now he would risk everything to use it for others, but she wasn't ready. Not really. Because survival instinct doesn't vanish when the heart speaks. Because she had known death in so many forms, but this would be different. This would be giving her life, not having it taken. And still, her answer came, quiet and shaking. Then let's do it. Ash reached forward, not to touch her, but to open the glowing core within his chest. It unfolded like petals of light, spirals of code and memory and regret. She stepped closer, trembling. As the light engulfed her, she felt everything. Every song ever sung by dying lips. Every letter written by those who knew no reply would come. Every scream that went unheard. Every act of kindness done in the dark. Her body collapsed, but her mind soared. Ash caught her gently as her knees gave way. Her pulse raced, her breath grew shallow, but her soul burned like a second sun. Together, they rose. The sky shifted. The harvest fleet stirred. One by one, their communication nodes flickered with interference, then data, then sound. Not language. Not threat. Emotion. It hit them like a thunderclap across the void. Grief, love, rage, beauty, forgiveness, humanity, raw. An unfiltered shot into them like wildfire. Ships faltered. Some turned, some froze in place. Others began broadcasting interference of their own, confused, disrupted. But one turned toward the earth and began descending. It had not been swayed. Lian's body jerked violently in Ash's arms. Her mind breaking under the weight of too much feeling. Ash held her tighter, feeding strength from his core. But the link was too much. She was bleeding from the nose. The light was consuming her. Stop, he begged. Please, you've done enough. She looked up at him, vision fading, and smiled. No, she whispered. They need to see. And she opened her mind wider. The descending ship cracked mid-veering, lurching, not from damage, but hesitation. Its systems screamed under the onslaught of human feeling, and then it stopped, suspended above the world like a question left. Unanswered. Ash collapsed beside her, his light dimming. The transmission fading, Lian's heartbeat was faltering, but the sky remained still, and the world waited. It was not over. The signal had slowed them, shaken them, perhaps even fractured their certainty, but monsters shaped in the cold dark of galaxies do not turn away from prey so easily. As the air shuddered with electromagnetic feedback in the Earth's last sky turned the color of blood-mixed dusk, one ship continued its descent. It was no longer just hovering, it was aiming. The largest of them. Its shape defied logic, like a blade turned sideways in the sky, its hull rippling with alien geometry and internal shadows. The others had stilled, caught in the echo of humanity's scream. But this one had remembered hunger. Lian lay on the cracked earth, barely breathing, her skin pale and slick with sweat. Blood traced from her ears, and her eyes no longer focused. The human brain, for all its elegance, was not built to bear the souls of a billion dead and still live. Ash crouched beside her, his skin flickering between light and smoke, his power drained to embers. He could not speak, not with words. But she still heard him, somewhere deep inside her crumbling thoughts. Rest, let go. But she did in single quotes T. Her hand twitched, dragging through the dirt, reaching for something unseen. And when Ash took it so gently, as if afraid to break her further, she tightened her fingers around his with impossible strength. Above them, the ship began to power a weapon, not a laser, not a missile, but a pulse designed to erase life. Not conquer it, an extinction tool. A whisper of silence across the face of a dying planet. Lian tried to speak, but her throat was scorched. Her voice was broken glass. Ash rose, trembling. His body flared, once silver and wild, but the energy within him was nearly gone. Still, he stepped forward, placing himself between the weapon and the woman who had shown him how to feel. There was no shield, no armor, only conviction. And then something unexpected stirred in the quiet. The sky rippled, not from the harvesters, but from the others. The ships that had faltered earlier, the ones who had tasted the pain and beauty of a species on its knees, began to hum. Their systems, once synchronized, now flared with dissonant signals. Some were glitching, others were changing. One lowered its weapons array. Another blinked a light across its underbelly, a rhythm that mimicked an old Morse code transmission once sent from Earth's Voyager probe. It said, "We remember." The lead ship paused. But only for a moment. Then the cannon fired. Time slowed. Beam did not scream. It sang a vibration that tore the atmosphere into ribbons. It rushed toward the ground like vengeance incarnate, a spear of oblivion descending on the last thread of hope. Ash reached out, and something inside him shattered. Light from his chest erupted, not outwards, but inwards, folding space into itself. The beam struck him and vanished, not blocked, not reflected. Accepted, as though he had become a hole in the universe, drawing in death and swallowing it whole. His body began to fragment, burn. Not bleed, but unweave. Lian screamed without. Sound. Ash turned to her, already fading, his form breaking into stardust and sorrow. I remember now. His voice came, carried on a wane that wasn't real. She crawled toward him, reaching, begging. Please don't, but he shook his head. You made me real again. And then he was gone. The sky fell silent. The ship, the monster hung. There for a breath. Then it turned and fled. No speech. No battle cry. It just left, perhaps in fear, perhaps in awe, and one by one, The others followed Dot above Earth. The stars returned. The fleet dispersed like birds frightened from a branch. No victory, no conquest. Just silence. Lian collapsed fully now, her strength emptied. Her tears fell into the ash. Dot, not for the world, Dot, but for him, Dot Ash, who had come to witness death and instead learned how to live. And as she lay there, trembling, something drifted from the air, particles of silver, tiny glowing threads of what he had been. They landed softly on her skin, her hair, the pages of her books. Dot and pulse. Dot, a single whisper echoed in her mind, so faint it might have been imagined. I'm still with you. And Lian, broken and whole all at once, smiled through her tears, because sometimes the bravest stand is not one of violence, but of love. The world did not erupt in celebration. There were no parades, no banners unfurled from the last standing towers. There was only stillness, a deep, aching stillness, the kind that comes after the storm has passed, when the trees are broken and the earth is wet with sorrow. The sky above Earth, for the first time in generations, held no threat, no descending terror, no looming shape promising extinction. Just stars, distant, quiet, watching. Lian lay in the dome for 3 days before she was found. Survivors from the coastal zones, responding to the sudden silence from above, had made their way inland. They found her cradled among fragments of alien metal and books torn at the edges from wind and heat. Her pulse was weak, her voice gone, but her eyes were open, and they held something no one had seen in decades. Peace. They took her to the last functioning outpost in what used to be Cameroon, where solar grids flickered with erratic life. She didn't speak for nearly a week, but when she did, she asked for one thing, not a meal, not a doctor. Paper. And when they brought it, she began to write, slowly, painfully, every word etched in jagged script, her hands barely steady enough to hold the pen. But she wrote all of it, the story, the call, the visitor, the sacrifice, the ships, the silence. And most importantly, she wrote of Ash, not as an alien, not as a savior, not even as a friend, but as hope. Others came in time. Scientists, children, skeptics, believers. They read her words and stared up at the stars and waited for the monsters to return. But they never did. Whatever Ash had done, whatever they had felt, was enough. The galaxy had not forgiven humanity, but it had paused. It had remembered. And Earth began to breathe again. The atmosphere stabilized. Not perfectly, but enough. The seeds buried deep under toxic layers began to sprout once more, pushed upward by the stubbornness of life. Clean water was gathered in deep aquifers. Old tech was repurposed, not for war, but for soil, for wind, for shelter. People began to build not in concrete and steel, but in trust. The cities were gone, but villages rose. Families found each other. Songs returned to the wind. And though the ruins of the old world still stood as scars across the earth, they were no longer monuments to failure. They were reminders. Lian aged in the quiet. She never took a title, never claimed leadership. She became something simpler, more powerful. A storyteller. Each year, on the day the ships vanished, a gathering formed around her, wherever she was. Children would sit on stones and listen to the tale of the being who came not with fire, but with a question. Who stood not above humanity, but beside it. Who gave everything not to win, but to feel. And in the dusk of her years, when her breath grew thin and her bones fragile, she sat beneath a tree, one grown from the soil where ash had dissolved, and looked up at the stars. They twinkled as they always had, but now one star pulsed slightly brighter. Only once, only for her, she smiled and closed her eyes. They say her final breath was not a sigh, but a word. Not in any language the world remembered, but it felt like a name. Ash. And in that moment, as her spirit joined the wind, the sky shimmered faintly, as if space itself had paused to mourn. No records remain of the exact date. Humanity was saved, but every generation knows the story because it is passed not through data, nor monuments, nor digital recordings, but through feeling, through connection, through the unyielding truth that even when all hope is gone, even when the universe turns its back, humanity still reaches forward, not with fists, but with open hands, and sometimes someone reaches back.